And all right then, cool. Look, you ready, man?
Yes, I am ready.
Outstanding. All right, chat room again. Thank you very mucho for hanging out with us, and here we go. Welcome to Podnutz Pro number 25. 25 shows, man.
Wow,
That's a lot of shows, bro.
it is. Maybe it's time to wrap it up. No, just kidding.
And for those who are asking, what is Podnutz Pro? Podnutz Pro is a podcast where we take you from home PC repair and we introduce you to small business. Everything from appliances like servers and routers and Barracuda spam firewalls and switches and all type of fun stuff that you just won't see at Bob's house at home. So let's introduce the host and the star of the show, Mr. Matt Rainey. What's going on, man?
Hello, Lalo, everybody. Doing good.
Cool, cool.
It's middle of a short week, so that's always good.
Yes, outstanding. And how was your Memorial Day weekend?
It was terrible, but that's okay. It's over now. How about you?
I went to mine was they're pretty good. They got to hang out with the girls, so we definitely had fun. But I mean, overall, this week has been good. I do have Friday off, so it's gonna be superb. But pretty good, man. We both had long days. So let's get the show started, man.
Sounds good.
All right, man. What are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about SSL certificates and how to install them, how to renew them on your small business server.
Okay.
Sounds exciting.
Oh, super exciting.
So,
The secure socket layer.
right. Now, these are important because I see a lot of places that don't have them, and it's relatively easy to implement this, and a lot of things require this. Some phones, and let's explain what this is. This is when you are accessing your server, your mail server, remote web workplace, whatever it is, from outside the network or inside the network, but outside the network coming in. You might have a phone that's using active sync. It's coming into your mail server. You might use the remote web workplace site. If you don't have a SSL certificate in Internet Explorer 8 and higher, you'll get that warning that confuses users that says this certificate is not trusted. It's recommended that you close Internet Explorer, basically.
Right.
And that confuses a lot of users. And some phones require an SSL certificate to talk to it.
But
Some don't, some do.
right, and what SSL is for those who do that kind of gray about that area. Back in the day, what SSL was, I think it was created by Netscape, if I'm correct, I think. But it pretty much was an encryption from point A to point B. But today is more used to kind of verify who you are, that you are podnuts.com, you are who you say who you are. So, that's sorry, Matt.
Right, and we explain this to clients. They say, "Why do I need this?" And you can tell them it's basically another party that everybody trusts, that you authenticate to, and they vouch for you. Basically, it's like if you went to a doctor's office, you want to see a certificate on the wall from a known credited medical school that says, yes, he's a doctor. You don't want to see a hand-scribbled note from the doctor saying, yes, I am a doctor. You want that trusted from somebody else.
Yes. Which I will tell
So,
you that the commercials are cracking me up when they go, Matt is a licensed professional. Oh no, I'm sorry. I was looking for an unlicensed professional. Right.
so it's just a way to trust. It's saying you are who you say you are.
Yes.
That's what it's for. So to do this, they've changed it in Small Business Server 2003. It's different than in 2008, and we'll cover each one. And for those watching the video, you'll see some screenshots, and we'll explain it as we go so you can follow along listening. But if you happen to see it, you get the benefit of the screenshots.
Great.
So I think that will cover Small Business Server 2003 first.
Okay.
Now, the screenshots that we have are for renewing a certificate. And we'll go over the differences, but for the most part, the screens are going to be the same. There's a couple of differences, but not that many, and we'll cover those. Um, so let me see. You got those?
Yep. And I'm on the
Okay.
2003, the Cert about to expire shot.
Okay, so this is actually some ones I did this past week. We have them a lot. So this, I get a call. Normally, what happens is we sell, we resell, or we're a reseller that we can purchase these SSL certificates from our reseller account. So normally we get notified when one's about to expire and we can take care of it. But if we miss one or we didn't purchase one for the company and now we're doing their work, we may not get notified. A lot of times, if we're not notified of it expiring, we'll get a call from somebody saying their phone stopped working or Outlook over HTTP stopped working because that requires a trusted certificate.
Okay.
And when that happens, one of the first things I do is check to see if their certificate is expired. And let's just use an example of Podnutz. It's not a real site or trusted site, but if they were using remote web workplace, I would open up Internet Explorer, go to https:// and then I'd put in there either Outlook web access link or the remote web workplace link. So let's just say mail.podnutz.com/remote. Now, right away, if I get the screen saying it's not safe to continue, we want you to close it, recommended, you can continue. And after that part, once you're on the page, where the lock is in the address bar, you can click on that lock, and it's different for different versions of whatever browser you're using.
Right.
But in Internet Explorer, you click on the lock and you do View Certificate. And this screenshot I have up is of one that I did. I did View Certificate, and I can see it expired June 18th, 2011. So it was going to expire. Now, this one we got notified, apparently, because I renewed it. But if it's expired already, of course, the expiration date is going to be the day before, usually the day before, because they notice the next day.
Right.
They give you a call. So this is what you see. So here I can see it's either about to expire or it's going to expire. So I know I need to do something. So in 2003, what you're going to do, if you want to, and this first part is if you want to have a new one or if you want to renew. You'd want to have a new one if you never purchased one before, meaning they still have a self-signed certificate from your server. By default, when you install Small Business Server, it has its own certificate, kind of like the doctor writing his own note saying, I'm a doctor.
Okay.
He's saying he's a doctor, but you have to trust that doctor to know if he's telling the truth or not. Same thing with a self-signed certificate. So you're going to go into Start, Administrative Tools. In Administrative Tools, you're going to have Internet Information Services, IIS Manager. Once you open up this, you're going to expand websites. You're going to see application, pools, websites, web service extensions. You're going to expand the websites, and you're going to go to the default website. You're going to highlight that. You're going to right-click on it, and you're going to go to Properties. Now what you see is the default website properties. And here, you're going to click on the Directory Security tab in here. And I'm guessing you're keeping up, Alana?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Under the Directory Security tab, at the bottom, there's a section for Secure Communications. And one of the buttons on the right says Server Certificate. You're going to click on that button. You click on that button, you get a Welcome to the Web Server Certificate Wizard. Click on Next. Now, what you see at this next screen depends on where you are with your certificate. If you want to get a new one for Small Business Server 03. If you don't have one, you're just using the self-signed. What you're going to have to do is remove it, remove the current certificate, and then do next, and then basically it's going to get rid of your certificate. Then you go back to the wizard, and what you're going to see is new certificate or add a certificate. I'm not sure exactly the wording, but it's something new or add. And at that point, it's almost the same as the renew certificate. So here we're renewing, so we're going to put renew the current, and we're going to click on next. We're going to prepare the request now, but send it later. And the request that you're preparing is just a authentication key that you're going to send into wherever you're buying this certificate, HostGator or GoDaddy, whoever it is. You're going to have a file. So we're going to prepare it, but send it later, and click on next. It's going to ask you for a name of the file. What do you want to name this file? By default, it's going to be c:\certreq.txt. You can rename this. You can do whatever you want. This particular server already had one because they've renewed a couple of years. So I just add to the end of cert request txt, I just add the date that I'm doing it. So I just know which one's which.
Okay.
So I just appended the date on there on mine. So now my file name says c:\certreq 052311.txt. It really doesn't matter what you name this file. Just know where it is because you're going to need it. So you're going to click on next. Now, if you were doing a new one, you would have some extra screens asking you what the friendly name is, what the server name is, and here's where you're going to type in the information. On this renewal, it's already in there because we've already entered that information. So let's just say we're doing Podnutz. I would just keep it simple, keep it all the same. Issue to mail.podnutz.com, friendly name, mail.podnutz.com. You can just type everything mail.podnutz.com, so you don't, and make sure you spell it correctly. Because if you misspell it, you can't fix it.
Right, exactly.
You have to do a new request.
And sometimes you learn that fact the hard way.
Right. So the new one, you're going to have the same screens. You're still going to request it. It's just you're going to have some screens about the name of the server, mail.whatever.com or whatever you're using. So on here, it's just telling you this is what you're renewing. Here's your file name. You're going to click next, and it's going to, the final screen in this section is completing the web server certificate. And it tells you what your file name is. And it says on here, send or email this file to your certification authority, which will send you a response file containing your new certificate. And that's what we're going to do. It depends. And if you click on the next one, I've got this file open. And just for people who are curious, this is not the actual certificate request for this client, but this is what it looks like. Okay, it's going to be a random string of characters, and it's going to say -- begin new certificate request with dashes. Then the body is a random string of characters, and then -- end new certificate request -- Now, depending on where you're buying your certificate, a lot of times they just want you to highlight and copy and paste the contents of this file. They don't necessarily want the file. They may have a space where it says paste your request here.
Right.
You'll just copy and paste it in. Now, one thing you have to be aware of when you're renewing this or getting new ones, this is your request. And it said on the previous screen, they're going to email you the actual certificate, which looks similar to this, but they're going to email that to whoever your either admin contact or technical contact is for your domain. So make sure you have access to the emails that it's referenced. And you can do a who is and look up before you do this process. Do a who is and look up admin contact, technical contact to make sure that you have access to those emails.
Because you're in a world of hurt where if you take over a job with the old network admin somehow lock this email, you know, in a scenario where you don't have a email, the server. I mean, I've seen this registered to their own private email address, and then But at that point, you run into a situation that Matt it's explaining you're not authorized to renew this cert.
Right, and that's happened quite a bit. And the way you want to remedy that before you start this process is you have to update your domain records. So change your admin contact, change your technical contact. And that's a different topic completely.
Right.
But the main point is you know that it's going to send an email to those. Now, some registers also may have administrator at domain name as an option in addition to whatever admin contact and technical contact that you have. Those may be Yahoo or Google, but it may also give you the chance to email to administrator or postmaster at domainname.com that you're doing. So just know that before you do this. So you're going to copy and paste this into whatever registration provider you're doing. And what you're going to get back is what looks like the next certificate, which just says dash, 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 begin certificate, dashes, then the body, and then the dashes, end certificate, and the dashes. Okay? And this is probably going to be in an email. You're just going to get this in your email. What you want to do is copy, and you don't want any, and same with the request. With this certificate, you got to make sure you don't have any spaces. So you need the last dash and end certificate to the first dash of begin certificate. You don't want any where it says end certificate and it's got some dashes. If you even have a space highlighted, it's not going to work.
Right.
It's got to be exact. So you're going to take that. What I do is I take that request, highlight it, copy, paste it. It's in my clipboard. I go back to the same wizard, following the same screens. Informate IS Manager. You're going to go right-click Default Website, go to Properties. You're going to go to the Directory Security. You can go back to the Server Certificate tab. You get the Welcome to Web Server wizard. You click on Next. But now you notice the only options that you have is process the pending request and install a certificate, or delete the pending request. Because if something happened with that request and it was wrong, something happened to it, you've got to delete it.
Right.
So if you deleted it next, when you went back in to run the wizard again, you'd have all the choices again. You could start over if you messed up. Now, we didn't mess up, so we're going to process the pending request.
Okay.
And we're going to install it. Click on Next. Now, what I do, when I get that certificate file, I highlight it all, copy it. I make a new file on the C drive, and I might call it, if this was cert req052311.txt, I'm going to make a new text file, copy all that stuff in there. Then I'm going to rename the text file to .cer for certificate. So in the end, I might have a C colon, and I might name the server name, so server.cer. So I'm going to save that. So now when I'm at this screen, when I hit browse, I'm going to browse to the C drive, and it's going to see that CER file. I'm going to select it. I'm going to click on Next. It asks you what port you want to use. 443 is what you want to use unless you have something unique in your situation. Then it's got a summary. Pretty much the same thing. It tells you where you bought it from, when it expires, all this other stuff. Next. That's pretty much it. That's it. If it was new, at the second part, if it was new, it doesn't matter. The only thing different with the new one is that you're going to have some different screens at the beginning where you want to remove it first and then add a new one. And after it's all done, I go back to my browser. I go back to that same HTTPS site. And now I should not get a warning. I should go straight to the site. I can click on the lock, go to View Certificate, and I can see the new expiration date. It's done.
Exactly. And it's great that you provided these screenshots here, because I remember doing this manually for the first time, and it was very intimidating. But the fact that if you go by bad screenshots here, it's a good walkthrough of what the process should look like. Again, what Matt's I also suggested, depending on what you're doing, you might see some different screens, but the foundation is there that you should be able to walk through it.
And this is '03. They made '08 a lot easier, in my opinion.
All right.
I think that was like 20 steps or something to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And in '08, one of the few things I do like is how they made SSL certificates.
Okay,
They made
cool.
them easier. There's not too much more I like about it, but this one I do like. So if you have 2008 server, one difference is if you had a self-signed certificate in '03, you had to remove it before you could add a new one. In '08, you don't have to do that. It can just overwrite it. So
Oh,
you don't
okay.
have to remove it and then add. You can just. So in '08, you're going to start with the Windows SBS console, like you do for almost everything else in '08, small business server. One of the things under the connect to the internet section in that console is add a trusted certificate. So we're going to click on that. And this is a renewal, so you get a little welcome screen. Just click on next. You can read it if you're interested. Um, Now this is the screen with the next one. This says a valid certificate, a valid trusted. In this case, a valid trusted certificate already exists because they're renewing. But if you don't have one that's trusted, you can still replace the existing certificate. Right now we're renewing, so we're just going to click on the option, I want to renew my current trusted certificate with the same provider. And it says with the same provider, but it doesn't have to be, because this one I did last time wasn't the same provider, but they still renewed it.
Okay.
Um, so you click on next. Now, the next screen, it has the trusted certificate request right in this window. It just gives it right to you. You can click copy, save the file. I just do copy because I can copy right away and then I can email it to or paste it in whatever interface I'm using to buy the certificate. So I just copy it, I have it on my clipboard, I click on next. Same kind of thing as before with '03, meaning I can come back later and do the next part. So I'm going to have my certificate provider needs more time to process the request. I'm going to click on next. You get a section here about import the trusted, it's just some warnings. And if you do view warning details, it just tells you that the request was generated, but it has not been received yet. I'm not sure why it's a warning because you told it already. My provider needs more time. So I'm not sure what that warning's about.
Yeah, and I can
Like that
see
warning.
where that could confuse someone also.
Yeah. So we told it to wait, but it's a warning. So just if you want to click on that warning, that's what it is. So now you'll get the same kind of thing. You'll submit that certificate request to your provider. They're going to email back, and it's going to have the certificate, which is same kind of random thing. I'm going to take that from the email normally. I'm going to copy it so I have it. I'm going to go back to the small business server console, click on add a trusted certificate. But I get an option that says a request is in progress. It knows it's generated something. So now I'm going to select I have my certificate from my provider. And I'm going to click on next. Now I can just paste in this into this window, just paste it in. Or if you saved it to a file, you can browse to it and save it. But I just paste it in. It's easier. Click on next. And the next screenshot, I just scroll down so you see it has the in certificate with no spaces. You can see my little cursor there.
Okay.
And next, it's going to import it, and you're done. So there's much less steps in 2008. And then of course I verified it by doing the same method. Went to the website, and I can see the new expiration date. So and that's pretty much it for '08. '08 is, I think, much easier for
It,
SSL certificates.
and that was like the process entailed for '08 is much easier, especially the whole delete my current cert and all that good stuff. So
And it's a lot of people run into problems because they get used to '03. So they try and go into IIS to do this. and you don't want to go into IIS to do this in '08. So people run into problems when they're used to doing it with the '03 way and not using the '08 way. So just be aware of which server you're doing and follow the right ways to do it. Now, when you get an SSL cert, there are different kind of certs. There's normally you're just going to need the basic cert, meaning I've got one cert and I've got resolving to one name, mail.podnutz.com. That's all I need a cert for. That's all I have. Some servers, in some situations, let's say you're hosting email for a bunch of people, you may need 4 or 5 certificates for that server. But you can only have one certificate per server. You can only install one. As you can see from that wizard, I can only have one. I can renew it. I can delete it. You can get what's called a multi-domain. I'm not sure if it's called, but a multi-host or multi-SSL certificate, where you can actually have 4 or 5 names on that certificate. There's also what's called a wildcard certificate, which is expensive. Let's say a regular cert might cost, depending on your provider, 80 to 100, 150. A wildcard certificate might cost $500 or more. And that means whatever address you go to, it's going to resolve and it's going to be trusted. So
on whatever site on your domain, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I got 30 sites. If I went to mail.podnutz.com, it's trusted. Mail.podnutzpro.com, mail.betterpctech.com. It'll all be the same thing. If it's on my server, it's going to be trusted.
Gotcha.
But those are expensive. Those are expensive. And those, a lot of times with these other SSL certs, you can get a response back from your provider right away. If it's just a one name cert for server, those things come back right away. These other specialty certs take longer to process. So it might take a few days. It could take longer for them to go through all the steps to verify that what they're giving you is actually trusted. So those aren't instant certs if you're looking for something quick. Those take time to process.
Okay.
I'm looking at my notes. Did I miss anything?
No, I think you hit it right on the dot. And again, for those of you that are listening to the MP3, and take the opportunity to watch the video, because Matt did include some nice slides for you to watch, and it's pretty much identical to what you're gonna see. So
now I've had some issues sometime where I had somebody try to renew a cert on '03, and they connected to the server using Remote Web Workplace. And they got to all these screens through Remote Web Workplace, connect to the server, everything's fine. When they removed that cert, they lost connection.
Ooh.
And now there's no cert at all. So now you can't connect. So just be aware when you're doing this on '03 server. It's fine if you're in with RDP, because you don't need a cert for that.
Right.
But if you're connected to Remote Web Workplace, you're going to get knocked off.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're relying on Outlook Web Access, if it's going to email to administrator@podnutz.com and you're relying on OWA to get that email message, you're not going to get it, because you're not going to get the OWA with no cert. When you remove that self-signed cert and you're waiting for the new one, you're not going to get back in. So.
Right, and then this also brings up the good point is you don't want to do this during production hours, A lot of times you want to do it after hours.
I do it production hours. That's just me.
Well,
I like to roll the dice.
But in saying that, do you warn does the office get a notice that between, this half-hour time frame that remote workplace might not work?
Yeah, it's always better to warn them just for the worst
It's always
case.
better. So is that a no? Do you not warn people?
You could be down for up to 5 days. And of course, there's no downtime and you look great. Now, one thing I had to do one time when they only had Outlook Web Access, I think for that client, I couldn't RDP for some reason. We couldn't do some kind of remote. I don't remember the exact instance. But what I did, before I did the whole process, I saw what was going to happen. I knew what was going to happen. I went into the administrator account, which I knew it was going to email the cert to the administrator account, and I just forwarded all the mail for administrator to my work address. So as soon as it hit their exchange server, it forwarded to me on my address, and I was able to get it that way.
Ah, a good
So
idea.
that's how. And then once I was back in, I just turned off the forwarding. And that doesn't come up much because usually you can RDP in,
Right.
and once you're in, it's not a problem. But I've had that happen before, and so if you have that issue, just set the account to forward to yours before you start,
That's a good tip.
and you won't have that issue. But that was interesting. I think that particular client we had to go on site, and they weren't too close, and that was a good lesson learned from that person.
Yeah, like the lessons I've taken away from doing this is, as you stated before, is to make sure that whoever's the authorized person, you can access their email box, and if not, go ahead and have that change. And when we say have it change, Matt, and as Matt knows, it's not a simple process to get that change. There's paperwork involved, and I feel like I'm buying a house.
Right, and most times it's going to be somebody who was there and left.
Hmm.
Now, depending on the situation that they left in, you may be able to call them and say, "Hey, I need you to change this so it's not in your contact anymore." But if you're doing work for somebody, one of the first things you should check, well, not the first, but it should be on your list, is to check the domain name and see how it's registered, who the contacts are, because it's going to come a point sometime when you need to manage the domain name, manage the DNS, and it's the time to find that stuff out is not when you need it done.
Yes,
So
I agree.
it should be on your list for a new client to check this stuff. And if they say, "Well, I don't know how to change my DNS records," or "I don't have a login for that," then start the process to get that stuff because you're going to need it. And if you don't have it, then somebody else has it who may not, who shouldn't have it. So
Exactly. And
they
again,
could
and
go in and change your records to point to wherever they want to point to. They bring up podnutz.com. It could point to, twit.tv. Who knows?
oh, sure. And again, and if you don't have the information in front of you when the stuff happens, your life can become hell quite quickly. But it's nice when you already have the information. It's no biggie. When you make a phone call, you process. You go to a website, or depending who the registrar is, and well, life is good.
Yeah, the most difficult I've had is you have to send in company letterhead,
Yeah.
letter on company letterhead to the company, and process it by mail, and then they let you in. But normally you can do it electronically.
Cool.
But I've seen some issues where it hasn't been good. Because one of the things they'll do is they'll email the person who is listed as admin contact and say that they want to verify, or somebody else is saying that they have access to it. And if they're malicious, they'll say, "No, it's mine. That's still my domain name. I'm still the admin contact." Now you got to prove this is mine, this is not yours, that kind of thing. It can get fun.
Yeah.
And I've seen lawsuits for domain names where somebody wouldn't give them up.
And it's funny that you say that, 'cause I have seen that where, you actually get lawyers involved, and there's a court battle because, I don't want to give up 123.com because it's under my name. I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, and that's why you want to be careful. Sometimes you get employees who say, "I can set up your domain name for us." Well, they register under their own name. They're the contact. When they leave, they bought it really, unless you can show that you paid for the domain name, and they just put it in their name, you're gonna have a hard time.
Yep, I agree.
So yeah, I'm thinking one case in particular where it was pretty fun. It was a government entity, and they went to court. That did not turn out good for the employee who tried to steal the domain name. Of course, he didn't think it should affect his job there. He wouldn't turn over the domain, but he didn't know why it affected his job.
I don't understand why you guys are upset.
Yeah, basically that's what he said, which I thought was pretty funny.
Um,
So do we have any emails, or do we need to cover? Do we have anything else to add about the SSL certs? I wonder if anybody.
I think you covered the foundation. Now there are some of you that are saying, well, there's so much more to SSL and the encryption, and yes, and like the point was not to explain how SSL works behind the scenes, but as
Oh no,
far
definitely
as
not.
it's just to renew a cert or to install a cert on your server, which is a primary job function, because most people don't buy a cert for 5 or 10 years. They buy on a year by year the basis, so you have to go through the exercise all the time.
Right. And knowing why you need it. A lot of clients say, "Why do I need that?" Well, without it, you can't do this, or your phone's not working because of this.
Hmm.
So you might troubleshoot an issue with some phone, and you might run around in circles until you realize, well, they don't have a trusted certificate because no one ever
Hmm.
did this. You put the trusted cert on, everything works fine. You can't have Outlook over HTTP without a trusted cert. So a lot of things don't work without it, or
Well, it
you're going to
does.
waste trying troubleshooting if you don't have it.
Or what I would do is show clients that ugly IE page that you had stated, like, do you trust this site? And I said, do you want your customers seeing that? I'm just saying.
Like I said, I don't trust your site. I close it right away. I tell everybody to close it right away. It's dangerous. So,
No, in fact, and depending on what browser you have, Firefox gives an ugly page if it does not trust the site. Like you
yeah,
feel like you're in enemy territory. I mean, that's how bad the warning page is. So
definitely. And a lot of times clients, they're just used to it because whoever the tech guy before was saying, well, that's not important, just click on it. Well, I know it's not important to you. You can click on continue, but
sure,
you haven't been able to implement any of this other stuff because of this.
exactly.
So, and I see a lot of new techs who, like I said, they waste their time. They're trying to get a phone working, and I'll look at it and say, well, there's no trusted cert. Oh, now I can't bill for any of that time because he might spend 2 hours putting the same settings in the phone over and over again, thinking if
Hoping
I put
that.
them in 10 times, it might work this time. Or even worse, trying to walk a customer through it, and you
Oh,
have no idea if they're putting the right things in that you're telling them to.
hmm.
And they really are. They're getting frustrated. They're putting the right things in, and it's the cert. So we put a cert on everybody's SBS server.
Okay.
That's just standard, and
Now,
everybody should do that.
now, do you do it a year by standard, or do you let the client, do you want to do it for 2 or 3 or 5 years, or
No, we do one.
one
We
year,
do year by year.
year
Yeah.
by year? Okay.
Yes, year by year, and when you install, and it's all a matter of. As you can see, this literally takes a few minutes
It does.
to install. It's up to you how you want to build this. I have minimums, so I go by minimums. But the knowledge to do this is worth, in my opinion, an hour labor, if you want to charge an hour labor. Just because a lot of people don't know how to do it, even though it's so easy, or they do it wrong, I've seen people who bought the wrong name and they just wasted $100. They can't get it back because they mistyped the name. So there can be things going wrong. So I don't think I don't bill 5 minutes for anything. I've
No,
discussed before,
no.
I have minimum. So
Like we've talked and time again, you charge on what you're worth. And I know that you've just seen a couple of screenshots, but you'll be surprised how intimidating these people are, because if you do it, the logic behind it, if you do it incorrectly, your website's not going to work. Your Outlook Web Access or wherever you're getting the cert for. I mean, so it's very imperative that it's done correctly. And it's a simple process, but as Matt and I both know, it's rather easy to get confused by just hitting the wrong option. Because Microsoft, of course, has this great thing of not wording things properly, as we've seen in one of your
yeah.
screenshots.
Now, in CO3, it was harder because you had to go down and quite into a directory to find where you even can run the wizard. You had to go into IIS, go to the properties of the default website, directory security. It's not jumping out at you where you should do this. So it's easy to be overwhelmed, especially if you're just getting into business, about how to do this. So it's easy if somebody shows you, but if you've never seen it, it's not easy. So
No, I definitely agree. And let me take this opportunity real quick to mention that Steve has a new product out for those of you that want to learn how to podcast. And it's a webinar. It's going to be June 25th and 26th. And there's more details if you can sign up at howtopodcast.biz. He'll send you an email, I believe, with all type of details. It pretty much is a cover-all webinar on how to podcast, the equipment used, what to do, what not to do, best practices, iTunes, the websites, and all that stuff. So he has assisted me with doing my own podcast on the side. And but when you have a bad lesson card like I did an hour ago, that doesn't help. But maybe I'll go ahead and attend that webinar too, just so I can learn a couple of things. But again, go to howtopodcast.biz and go ahead and sign up there, and little screenshot there, and Steve will get you all the information that you need to know. So I always get emails, Matt, saying, how hard is it to podcast? And it's not really that hard once you understand like the basics and the foundation. And I personally enjoy it. And I do a bunch of other podcasts, some not so computer related fun stuff. So, but it's definitely fun. So check it out, howtopodcast.biz, and that's June 24th and June 25th and 26th. It's a weekend. So anything more, Steve will let you know.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good.
All right, then cool. As far as emails go, let's go here real quick. Last week, Matt, you had, and when you and I were talking, you said to remind you about a story that you need to tell. And it was in regard to, and I wrote it somewhere, a SharePoint story that we had did after a podcast.
Right. That was, I think, 2 shows ago, when I was talking about remote access and opening up different ports and remote web workplace and Outlook web access. And that next morning, which was funny, the next morning I get a call. First call I get is a client wants to access their internal company web from the internet. And we don't open that up by default. But I thought that was funny because we just kind of talked about it. I didn't go over SharePoint that much.
Okay.
But it was a few steps on the O3 small business server. The first thing you do is run I think it's Connect to Internet Wizard, and you get the wizard about which things you want to have accessible. And let me pull that up real quick because I don't want to tell you the wrong thing. I'm gonna pull up. I'm logging into one of my servers right now.
That's fine, not a problem.
Well, actually, the first thing I did was go into the router and open up port 444 pointed to the server, because this operates over port 444. Then the next thing I did was go to, on O3 server management, and in there, one of the things to do under the to-do list, standard management to-do list, one of those options is connect to the internet. You run that because for some reason you always have to run that wizard for O3 server for anything. So you run that wizard, click on next at the screen. In this case, it asks you your connection type. Just select do not change connection type. Click on next. Next thing you get to is web services configuration. And in here, I just selected, everything else was checked. Like I said, it was checked. Outlook Web Access was checked. We allowed that. Remote Web Workplace, that was checked. Outlook Mobile Access was checked. Outlook via the Internet was checked. What was not checked is Windows SharePoint Services intranet site. So I clicked on that. Next, there's a web server certificate screen. Click on Do Not Change Web Server Certificate. Next, Do Not Change Internet Email Configuration. Next, and then Finish. Goes through a little configuring phase, and now if you've got your firewall port opened up correctly, they can go to, let's say, https://mail.podnutz.com:444. And they can log into their company intranet using their domain username and password. Okay. So I thought it was funny. And the second call I got was about setting up a bunch of wireless access points, which was the next week's show. So my first two calls were the show before and the next show. And the next 50 were normal day-to-day stuff.
And okay, cool. There was an email that was sent to me and you by Matt's Mon in the Podnutz forums, but I'm not gonna go over like the emails. It's kind of long, and I'm not sure if he wanted read on the show. But he got a gig setting up or extending a wireless network for a hotel. That the hotel got a bunch more users on there. Just some concerns there. The hotel has 2 floors. And this is a real general question, but what you, Matt, walking into that situation, what would you do? Of course, you do the survey, right, of the hotel room and see what they currently have. Would that be correct?
Right. And it would depend. If it's a motel, you can put them on the second floor. They probably work fine.
Okay.
If it's this big hotel with 20-foot ceilings, I'd probably put one on each floor.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's a motel, second floor is going to work fine. Now, you have to worry about the amount of traffic going through it.
That's correct.
So I'd probably go with some nicer access points, some HP ProCurve access points, or equivalent or higher. I'm not going to get the Linksys access points off the shelf, but
yeah.
The main thing is I'd probably put one on the, and you can tell if it's, like I said, if it's a motel, second floor, it's going to work. And depending on how wide the rooms are spaced out, it all depends on the site survey.
Right.
And that's easy. You get one out there. You put it where you want it. I put it where I wanted to put it, second floor, and I just see how far it goes. I go down to the first floor below it and just start walking away.
Yep, and just hit the major areas where like the receptionist desk, where they have offices, and then of course, and you wanted to make sure that that hotel room or motel room on the far corner can still get Wi-Fi. I assume they're advertising free Wi-Fi, for those who stay there. So.
Yep, and of course, all the it's your choice or the hotel's choice if they want encryption or
Right.
Of course, put them on a separate network than the company. You don't want them on the business internet, so you want to separate that traffic like we talked about, their own network. And some people even separate. You might have, depending on some setups, you can separate individual connections too. So it can get complicated in a hotel, but if they're not too concerned about one hotel guest sniffing another one, you can just put the access points out there and let them know that they're on. I'm sure they understand the risks of open internet, but
right. So I take away from what Matt said is do a survey and make sure you have the proper access point to handle a number of guests, because those ones off the shelf at Walmart will work fine for your home, but probably won't work fine, like you said, over 12-foot ceilings and going through floors and pipes and all that good stuff.
Now you also have to worry about your internet connection itself.
Yes, which he did bring up.
You don't want a cheap internet connection. And you don't want a cheap router, because if you've got 50 rooms and all of them are going to be online at once, you can quickly overwhelm a cheaper router.
Mm-hmm.
So they may have to get a nicer router. Then definitely off the shelf router is not going to work well for them. They're going to need a business class router to support 50 clients. So.
No, and I agree. And Matt was nice to draw a diagram. And for those of you in the forums that want to go check out his question in detail, just do a search for public Wi-Fi for hotel, and then we can conversate there. We have another email from about PoE switches. It's from Dave. And he said, one of the very nice things about PoE switches, at least on the Allied ones we use at work, is that you can cycle power on the device connected by disabling and enabling the PoE on the port. Of course, you have to know what port your device is connected to, but it saves walk-in, especially in a large environment. Thank you for the podcast. I very much enjoy both of your contributions, and that's from Dave.
Yeah, some nicer switches with management on those switches. You can log into the interface for the switch and just kill ports. That is nice.
Which I think we spoke on the podcast. There's someone these warehouses that have like the access point in the ceiling, and I think you made the example. The guy jumped on the forklift to disconnect it when he literally did not have to.
Right. So yeah, my way, the way I, because all these switches that we put in aren't managed switches because they're more expensive. They only need 2 or 3
Okay.
PoE drops. So you can pull the cable out, but on some switches, the nicer ones, you can just log into a web interface in the switch and just turn that port off,
I think great, and
which will cut power to it. Then you can turn the port back on.
what Dave did, because Matt gets a lot of messages, and he does answer like the bulk of them, and I'll definitely will give him credit on that. But what Dave did is he put inside there, P.S. It's okay to read on the show, because we get so much email we can't determine if you're just asking a question or if you just want that read on the show. So there's no dumb question. Again, we're here to spread the knowledge, and especially with networking and small businesses. I mean, it's just the realm is so large. So
Yeah, and I try and return all the emails. This past week was really bad, so some I didn't get to reply to. So if you email me, I didn't reply. I'm sorry.
no, man,
But I do try and reply to them.
There was another email here, and if I can navigate through my email, who is it? Bear with me for 1 second. I just had it up here. Anyways, someone had asked me, said, "Do you guys have show notes? Because you guys talk about really cool stuff."
Oh, yeah.
And I said, "No, I don't." But
I'll give you the long answer. No.
no. But if there is anyone that wants to volunteer to do show notes for Podnutz Pro, feel free to email Matt at podnutz.com or myself, Lalo, at podnutz.com. And I think this is one of the shows that definitely do need the show notes due to the subject matter that we speak about. So
Yeah, that is something we would like to have, and it would be nice for those to go back and check some links.
yes, and I would do it, but my week is jam packed with 50 hours of work and 3 podcasts, and we all know Matt is going off the walls with his with Marys all over the world. So if you want to volunteer, definitely let us know, and we'll take care of you. So
I got a funny story
Okay.
that happened this weekend. It's not, well, my daughter, she's 12, my eldest daughter.
okay,
She gets on her notebook. She can't get online. It's, Daddy, I can't get online. So I go and look at it, and it was just the wireless was turned off. So function F3, wireless came back on, connected right away. I told her that's whatever, so that's like okay, it's like $80. She goes, what? Because it's a service call. I mean, I get paid for this kind of stuff. Oh, Daddy, she said, do you really charge people for that? And I said, if I have to go to their office, because yes, if I have to go to their office, I charge them for that. And she goes, don't they feel stupid when it's just a quick thing like that you fix it?
hey,
Yes, they do.
hey, that's it. Look, unfortunately, and that's just the business that we work in. Again, it's an old topic, but if I take my car to a mechanic and they find a problem, they're gonna charge me. They're not gonna tell me, well, you had a bad spark plug, and don't worry about it. Have a good day. They have to make their money, unfortunately, and that's just the way it is. And if people look at it in that point of view, it's no big deal. But the problem is, I don't know what it is with computers that they just figure just because you hit 3 buttons that you don't have to charge them. Drives me nuts.
Right. It's the knowledge of what buttons to press.
Mm-hmm.
But even at 12, she understood. They must feel stupid. Yes, they do.
Oh yeah, and that's how Daddy makes his money. And then,
I said, yeah, I told her, don't you want to work on computers when you get older? I can teach you. You can come work with me.
oh,
She
she's
says, well,
saying,
maybe. Yeah, she goes, maybe that was pretty quick.
my neatest thing is when someone is, because you have some clients that like stand behind you, and that doesn't bother me. So then I put on the show instead of navigating through the Explorer. I go through the command prompt, and they go, "Wow!" And then they just walk away, and I go do what I got to do. But you understand behind me? I put on a little show for you.
Well, that's why I like doing remote work.
Yeah.
They can sit at the screen and stare at the screen all day long, as long as I'm remote. That's fine with me. I wonder if these same people go stand over the mechanic or anybody else.
It's funny you say that 'cause my dad does. I'm like, Dad, you can't be doing that. And he's like, why? I say, because if I was him, I would charge you more. But but that's just me. But great, man.
I make it a point when I have a appliance repairman or somebody come to my house. I make it a point. I don't even go in that room. I let them have a space, and I just say, if you need me, I'm over here.
Hey, and I definitely agree. And I mean, since I live in Florida, it's really hot. So I say, and you want a bottle of water, and they go, sure. And it just, you just get good customer service. But to your point, man, I don't stand over them and examine. It's their job, and that's what, you hope that you hired a professional in most cases. But
hey, this is kind of funny.
Yeah.
Okay, so when I just explained how to enable SharePoint, I was actually going through it on a client server, and I actually enabled SharePoint. I mean, I didn't put it, and it's on the router, so it won't work. But small business server will respond if it's reported, and apparently, it sent out an email to the users. It's a small network. It sent an email out saying your administrator has granted you access to the Windows Small Business Server Remote Web Workplace. So I get an email from the client saying, "What is this?" with the email forwarded. It's pretty funny. So anything you do, it's amazing. I didn't even know that email went out just for enabling SharePoint, but I guess it does. So I get an email from the client, which I can tell you this client is my father's office, so it's no big deal.
Oh, okay, good.
I'm gonna tell him he must have did something wrong.
What you do,
I might tell him it's a virus. See what he says.
Here you go, man.
So anything you do, it can make an effect for a lot of people.
Oh, sure.
And I'm sure everybody at that company got an email like this, which is only like 7, but
still, but it's. I always get a phone call saying, I got an email that stated this. What did this mean? And it's some people don't care. Some people actually pay attention to the email and they get freaked out, and then they contact you and then ask you questions and saying, what's this?
Right. So I thought it was pretty funny. He didn't waste any time sending that message, because this is 6 minutes after I did it. He emailed.
All right, man. Great. Matt, where can people find you, my friend?
They can find me, or they can email me at matt@podnutz.com, on Twitter sometimes at Podnutz Pro, or in the forums, the podnutz.com/forums.
Awesome. And you can find me at lalo@podnutz.com. You can also find me at betterpctech.com. I get emails daily. Are you done with the videos? I'm still working on them, and they're still work in progress. My daytime gig is just consuming a lot of hours right now because we're working on a gigantor project, but they are being worked on, and they will be the release. So thank you for your patience, and thank you for joining the show or taking the time to actually downloading the MP3. And we appreciate you, because without you, it would just be me and Matt just talking to each other.
Which is fine too.
Yeah, which after I think about it, I think it would still be a good conversation after that. So, all right then. So again, thank you again. I'll stick around for the post show for a bit, and we'll see you next week.